Welcome to The Record. I'm Katrina Szish in for Greta Van Susteren. Today in our nation's capital, soccer, politics, and a peace prize for the president. The occasion? Well, the World Cup is coming to the United States. After that, the president went back to the White House for some more serious business, and we're going to have that in just a moment. About a mile and a half away, the accused D.C. pipe bomber faced a judge. The suspect made some new revelations today, and we're going to check in with our correspondent outside of the courthouse. And the U.S. hit another suspected drug boat last night, but people are still talking about the deadly strike 3 months ago. As you know, a Navy admiral delivered a classified briefing on Capitol Hill yesterday. I'll speak with a congressman who was there. And do babies need all of those vaccines as soon as they're born? Maybe not. Dr. Deborah Birx joins me as the CDC prepares to make some major changes. Plus, Putin, well, he goes in for a big hug. What is happening here? Well, we're going to explain. And a bunch of people ending up on Santa's naughty list. From Florida to South Carolina to even London, some mean-spirited people are making a mess and stealing people's joy, and they're sounding downright grinchy. All right, but first, today President Trump attended the FIFA World Cup drawing as the United States is going to be one of the hosts of the big tournament next year. Mexico and Canada will also host some games. Tom Basile and Dan Turrentine are here with me now. Tom is the host of America Right Now, and Dan co-hosts The Huddle on YouTube and is a former Democratic strategist. All right, welcome to both of you here. The big debate, is it soccer or is it football? I mean, let's start with the important things first. Tom, President Trump made a funny joke about that, but again,
kind of has a point.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, the World Cup, massive. This one literally will be bigger than ever. More countries are going to be involved in this. Obviously, a big moneymaker for the United States, but national security is also going to be very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the president talked about that today. He said that if there are any crime problems in any of these host cities, we're going to take care of it. That was his plan. That was his vow. I think that the people in those cities are probably pretty happy that he's doing this crime crackdown. But the shame of it is that this is a really important moment for America, and nobody's talking about it. Everybody today, I look at all the coverage. All the coverage is about this peace prize and the fact that he's got a very close relationship with the president of FIFA, and that somehow is controversial because the president of FIFA shouldn't have a good relationship with the president of the United States, Donald Trump. And that's the kind of the thing that I think is unfortunate here in this country, that we're sort of focused on the wrong things here.
I think that's a great point. You know, Dan, I don't know if you're a soccer/football fan or not, but I think what's interesting is this is also a sport that is the most popular sport in the entire world. And maybe here in the United States, we're only kind of just getting to the party, so to speak. So even just from, I would say, a global means of bringing people together and even exposing Americans to something very different, I think there's a lot of, I will say, global goodness to what this could bring.
Oh, absolutely. First off, I love America. It's football, gosh darn it. Or it's soccer in this country. Football is the real thing. There's only one Super Bowl. But to the rest of the world, you're right. This is their Super Bowl. This is a great moment. We ought to celebrate. We are hosting. People from all over the world are going to come here. They're going to spend money. Hopefully our cities are, shining examples. It'll be great for our economy. Trump loves to, sports, loves to preside over things like this. We have the Olympics coming in 2 years in Los Angeles. Hopefully it's a great thing, and there are great games, or matches, as they call them.
Yeah, I was going to say matches, right? Okay. But Tom, let's talk about the national security component of this, because Marco Rubio and, of course, President Trump and the administration, they're rolling out a way for people from any country, if they buy tickets to the matches, to the World Cup, that they will kind of get pushed to the front of the line for their embassy to be able to be allowed to get a visa to come to the game. So obviously the administration taking this very, very seriously, but also wanting people to be able to participate and enjoy.
Yeah, and look, it is a challenge because now there were 19 on the 19 countries that are on the list of countries that are banned. We have some information that it may be actually as high as 30, but they haven't announced those yet. This is going to force the administration, though. It's actually going to be a good thing, because this is going to force the administration to put an vetting infrastructure in place that maybe did not exist before. So if I'm at Homeland Security, I'm using this as a catalyzing moment to try to solve some problems that we've certainly had in this country.
Yeah, speaking of solving problems, Dan, do you think any chance that this could sort of bring the left and the right together just a little bit?
I hope so. Look, sports tends to do that. I could imagine, a lot of members will have stuff in their district. People will want to go. So hopefully it does bring everybody together.
And
yes.
Tom, what do you think about bringing together our neighbors to the north and to the south? Because, of course, there'll be matches in Canada and also Mexico, and our relationships there have been a little prickly lately.
I just hope we beat the Canadians. That's all. If we can do that, that's fine. In round one, I'm happy. So,
I think it's funny, but also, let's talk about that peace award here for President Trump. Again, because a lot of people, of course, saying he should have received the Nobel Peace Prize. He did not. What do you make of this award? Do you think that makes some of those Democrats who are, I will say, maybe overblowing his relationship with the head of FIFA, make their heads explode even a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is what drives me nuts. Like, okay, so FIFA gave him an award. He's the president of the United States. FIFA wants a good World Cup. They want the president happy. Look, it's a great thing. Yes, it'll drive Democrats nuts that he's presiding over this.
A lot of people were triggered today. A lot of people were triggered today. And look, and in fairness to the Nobel Committee, Donald Trump has been back in office for 10 months. You have to wait and see how a lot of these agreements, whether or not how they hold, and what the future holds for some of these countries that he's impacted. And he very well, a year from now, 2 years from now, could very well still receive a Nobel.
Yeah.
And then more people will be triggered.
And everybody will be really upset. No, not everybody. But also, I think here do you see any potential of globally other countries who normally would be very excited to participate in the World Cup maybe saying, well, as a matter of fact, we're not going to do it? Or would that just be mayhem for their own citizens?
The gray hair gives it away. I remember the 1984 Olympics when we hosted it and the Russians boycotted it. Of course, we had boycotted 1980 in Moscow. Right. It's entirely possible. I mean, we'll see where things go in the world if there's a conflict or something, but there are certainly countries that don't like Donald Trump, that don't like us right now, and it would be a shame if their athletes, if their citizens paid a price for, what I would call relatively petty politics.
And I think the president gets that. We've seen some reporting that the State Department has already communicated to the Iranian delegation for FIFA that they will be allowed to attend. So they're extending, I think, some olive branches, and I think we're going to see more of that.
Now, I know you're saying you're obviously a football fan.
Yes.
Now, admittedly, I know the U.S. soccer team, not always that great.
Yeah.
We know the U.S. women's soccer team has been excellent in the past, but again, I don't know. Do we have any chance here? Do we even qualify?
We automatically, because we're one of the three hosts, so we're automatically.
Okay.
But we've been struggling, but they keep saying, like, we're on the cusp of breaking through. So hope springs eternal. But I would probably bet on the Italians and the Argentinians and the Germans.
Yeah. I don't know, Brazil,
if it was my
are they
money.
still good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are you a soccer fan?
I'm not. I just.
Well, we have a great panel here. All right.
I mean,
how about those Eagles?
Yeah, exactly.
Any sport where you can tie is a problem with me, right? So that's kind of an issue. Right? You spend all that money to go to the game, and what happened?
Yeah.
I love the World Cup though. It's fun. Yeah. It's a great spectacle.
It really is, and people get so excited and so into it, and this is going to be a big economic boom for so many of these cities. When you think about the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that are going to be coming, it is a great moment for
and it will
America.
create jobs, and again, so really exciting, a unifier and something very fun. And maybe you'll both learn to love soccer.
Absolutely.
Along with me. We'll talk about it after. All right. Tom Basile, Dan Turrentine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
All right. More records related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein could be out soon. Today, a federal judge in Florida ordered the release of grand jury transcripts from the federal sex trafficking cases of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, this comes after President Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act last month. The measure compels the Justice Department to release materials, but it is unclear when these Florida transcripts could actually come out. However, according to that Epstein Transparency Act, there is a deadline, and the deadline to release the material is coming up December 19th. That is just 2 weeks away from now. And also coming up, the January 6th pipe bomb suspect faces a judge. As new reporting reveals, he thought the 2020 election was stolen. That when the record continues.
Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country. Before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead in a new book, Pagan Threat, authored by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read it. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer. Plus, get Dick Morse's new book, The Real Charlie Kirk. 2 great books with our free offer today.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rove Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at rove.co/sparks. They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
Healthy aging support starts here with the innovative nitric oxide science pioneered by Human, supporting your body from the heart out through circulation, blood flow, blood pressure, and energy. Results you can feel, science you can trust. Get started today at livehuman.com.
I don't know about you, but I like things the easy way. That's why the Experian app is great. It shows me credit cards based on me and my credit. Right here in the app. Oh, look at that. I just found a new cashback card. Easy. Get the app from your big financial friend, Experian.
Today, the Virginia man accused of planting 2 pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. the night before the U.S. Capitol riots on January 6, 2021, appeared in court for the very first time. National correspondent Logan Ratick is outside the federal courthouse in D.C. with the very latest. Logan.
Yeah, Katrina, that's right. Brian Cole Jr., a 30-year-old from nearby Woodbridge, Virginia, appearing in D.C. federal court today after being arrested on Thursday. Now, he's facing multiple charges related to the pipe bombs that he placed outside of both the RNC and DNC headquarters back on January 5th of 2021. Now, Cole Jr. is charged with transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce with the intent to kill. That carries up to a 10-year prison sentence if convicted, and he also faces charges of attempted malicious destruction by means of fire and explosive materials. Now, if convicted on that charge, he could face 5 to 20 years in prison. Now, Cole Jr. confirmed that he is 30 years old and that he has a high school education, but didn't say anything else other than that. He was also joined by his family inside the courtroom, and he worked in an office for a bail bondsman company in Northern Virginia. Now, his father owns a bail bondsman company, but it's unclear if Cole Jr. worked for Cole Sr. But Cole Jr.'s attorney is from the same law firm that represented his father's company in a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security. Now, U.S. Attorney for D.C. Janine Pirro describes the arduous process that led to Cole Jr.'s arrest.
There were 233,000 black end caps of the type that were used in this case. I want you to think about the fact that the FBI had to go through the sale of every one of them to try to find commonality with an individual, along with the purchase of the pipe itself, the cap ends, the wires, the steel, and the 9-volt batteries. Every one of those had to be mined and remined to the point where we were able to then connect.
Now, FBI Director Kash Patel says that the FBI had to review 39,000 videos before tracking down Cole Jr. in Woodbridge, Virginia at his home. Now, Patel tells Newsmax that the public will soon know more about this plot.
And what you're going to learn in the next day or so is the information that we've exploited pursuant to our investigation in its totality to bring the suspect into court for presentment and charging. And I think at that point, instead of getting head of the Department of Justice now, you're going to see a lot of information come out in the, probably, I would say, the next 24 hours, speaking to that and other pieces of evidence.
And Brian Cole Jr. will be back here in D.C. federal court on December 15th at 1:30 p.m. He will have his detention hearing before Judge Michael Harvey, and Newsmax will be here to cover that in real time. Katrina?
Logan Ratick, thank you very much. Well, the U.S. military has struck another alleged drug trafficking boat. That was last night. U.S. Southern Command posted on X, quote, on December 4th, at the direction of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Joint Task Force Southern Spear conducted a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel in international waters operated by a designated terrorist organization. Intelligence confirmed that the vessel was carrying illicit narcotics and transiting along a known narco-trafficking route in the Eastern Pacific. 4 male narco-terrorists aboard the vessel were killed. End quote. Now, so far, the U.S. has carried out at least 22 strikes on suspected drug boats, killing at least 86 people. Let's bring in Texas Congressman and member of the House Intelligence and Armed Services Committees, Pat Fallon. Congressman Fallon, thank you so much for joining us on The Record. I know that last night's strike comes just hours after Vice Admiral Frank Bradley gave a classified briefing to top congressional lawmakers on the Hill. Now, of course, that briefing was to provide insight into a follow-up strike that has been making headlines. That was back on October 2nd that killed all remaining survivors on board that boat. You were in that briefing. Tell us what you heard.
Well, Katrina, the fact of the matter is I find it very interesting that these voices from mostly the left are concerned about, as you said, 22 strikes that may have killed upwards of almost 90 people, when they were absolutely silent when there were 563 strikes ordered by Barack Obama that was responsible for the deaths of thousands. And the fact of the matter is that the nation has an inherent right to defend themselves, and that's what we're doing here. President Trump is being very consistent. And whether it's, and you want to talk about the secondary strikes, whether it's a drone attack in the Middle East that kills 5 Islamic fundamentalist terrorists and then one gets away, we're going to order a second strike. So it doesn't matter if it's in the Gulf in that instance, because it's a surf and turf. Everything's on the menu.
Congressman, though, in terms of that briefing that you heard yesterday, was there anything that you heard or that was discussed that made it absolutely clear and should have made your fellow Democratic congressman realize as well that this was absolutely protocol?
Well, yeah, and the Secretary of War, Hegseth, did not order a kill them all. He gave them wide latitude. They knew what they were going to do. The mission was to eliminate the narco-terrorists. They fulfilled that mission. That's why the Admiral said he felt very comfortable in ordering a second strike, because just because they're floating in the water doesn't mean that they weren't people that they knew what was on that boat. Poison that is responsible for the deaths of 100,000 Americans a year. Those kind of drugs, the cocaine, the methamphetamine, the fentanyl. This was a drug boat, and they knew the risks. And they knew that they were carrying toxins into this country, and they paid the price.
They were also part of the terrorist mission, is what it sounds like you're saying here. Congressman, we also know that Senator Tom Cotton was briefed on the strikes. Let's listen to what he had to say after the briefing.
What exactly did you see in terms of the video of the second strike? Were there survivors?
I saw 2 survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight. And potentially, given all the context we heard, of other narco-terrorist boats in the area coming to their aid to recover their cargo and recover those narco-terrorists. And just like you would blow up a boat off of the Somali coast or the Yemeni coast, and you'd come back and strike it again if it still had terrorists and it still had explosives or missiles, Admiral Bradley and Secretary Hegseth said exactly what we would expect them to do.
Congressman said it's one of the most disturbing things he's seen in his career. Did that match
Who
up
did?
with what you, Congressman Hines?
No, I didn't see anything disturbing about it.
Congressman, did you see anything disturbing about that video?
It's never pleasant when you see human lives being extinguished. But you have to understand what their mission was. Their mission was to smuggle, I should say, toxins into the country that is killing 100,000 Americans a year. So absolutely, there was a death sentence that was executed, and rightfully so, because we need to protect this nation And these are the laws of armed conflict. We separated between combatants and civilians. We had intelligence. We knew what they were doing. And there is an ultimate price to be paid here. And I'm glad that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are protecting the American people.
President Trump has advocated for the release of that video to the American people so they can see for themselves exactly what happened. Do you support that?
I love transparency. Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we live in an open and free society. We live in a thriving republic, and I applaud President Trump for his continued commitment to transparency.
Do you feel moving forward with this mission that we could see some strikes on the ground in Venezuela?
That might be. That's the president's call. He's the commander in chief. But you know what this has also done, Katrina? This is about deterrence as well. If you want to dabble in the drug trade, there should be prices to pay. There should be consequences for your actions. They shouldn't have carte blanche to operate and think that, well, we have safe havens. We're not going to get struck if we're in Venezuela. We're not going to get struck if we're, in some other country. And it doesn't have to just be in international waters. So President Trump has put them on notice.
So you think this sends a message to other cartels who have been doing or are planning to do similar things?
Yeah, it reminds me of the old Tom Clancy movie, Katrina, A Clear and Present Danger. They are presenting a clear and present danger to the security of the United States, and we're not going to take it anymore. It's an incredible toll in lives, and God knows, on our health, our health care as well. So this is something that has to really be mitigated.
All right, Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you. All right, let's bring in retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General and former U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO, Blaine Holt, and Director of the American Military Project and former Army Ranger, Will Thibeau. Welcome to both of you. General Holt, I'm going to start with you here. Obviously, there was another strike, but all eyes, as we discussed, are on that strike from back to September 2nd. From what the congressman said, from what Senator Cotton said, from what a lot of military experts are saying, there is no there, to use an overly used phrase, but I'll use it anyway. Do you think that this will be enough to make people realize this was protocol?
Oh, I think it'll be enough for the American people. It won't be enough for a mainstream media that has, from day one, looked for any possible thing it can do to trip up President Trump or any member of his team. It is now interesting to me about the timing between their false claims and what the seditious six did to try to sow discord in the United States military during a time of military operations. And so that needs to be looked at. We need to dive into that because you can't let these things pass. If these things are allowed to escalate, then what you in effect have is a cold civil war in the swamp, and that doesn't serve the United States military or the American people.
Now, General, I know that we had you on American Agenda yesterday, and you put some pieces together based on your observations, and I just want to dive into that quickly before we get to Will. In terms of the timing, again, you mentioned the seditious six. And when that video came out, I believe this is what you're saying, and they were asked, well, what illegal orders are you talking about? They kind of said, well, nothing really yet, or they didn't really have an answer. Are you saying that they are sort of, I'm going to say, laid a trail of Skittles kind of setting up for this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's narrative building. And so, look, the strike that they had a problem with was the very, very first strike. And so they tee these things up, they create the narratives in advance, and then they play to them and they stuff them into the form that they want. What I'm saying is that it's pretty evident that this is what we're looking at, but those are just allegations. But now we should go ahead and try to prove that because, again, this hurts the United States military. And if you're an American elected official trying to hurt the United States military and its unity of effort, then I think you should be held accountable.
Will, you are a former Army Ranger. From what you've been observing with this, from the reports we've heard from Admiral Bradley, what is your overview? Does this sound like the mission was accomplished as it should have been?
I imagine so, Katrina. I was a small part of thousands of strikes over the course of multiple deployments to Iraq during the last term of President Obama and the first term of President Trump. Thousands, almost 6,000 strikes that happened in Iraq and Syria. And interestingly enough, there was never this kind of scrutiny applied towards lethal action delivered to, declared enemies in the United States, but halfway around the world. It seems odd to me that the establishment and Democrats in Congress are willing to exercise such animosity and such outrage when we're trying to protect literally our own shores. Admiral Bradley had the commander's intent to eliminate the threat coming to our homeland. That is his prerogative as the commander in charge of those strikes, and he made the decision. He's an incredibly experienced leader, and he has the trust of Secretary Hegseth, and it is almost crazy to see that Democrats, as General Holt explained, are arraying this supposed conspiracy in order to undermine this sacred trust between political leaders and the United States military. We really have to understand what they're trying to do here, and that's to erode the fundamental balance between these institutions, and it is as extreme as it sounds.
General Holt, if you do agree with what Will said, why do you think they're trying to do that?
Well, again, they're in a cold civil war. The swamp wants to get Trump at any possible way. They proved that in the first term with impeachment, Russiagate, Russia hoax, the lawfare, the bankruptcies, the election stuff. They're just never going to stop. And so this was their plan. The idea that the CEO of the world's largest enterprise would take time to figure out who lives and dies on a battlefield is ludicrous. But responsible leaders like Will and myself sat back, just said, let's have transparency and sunlight because we knew what would come back. But we're not done yet. We've got to get to the accountability, and I would encourage the Justice Department to take an aggressive look into this for the good of the nation and our military.
Speaking of transparency, Will, I asked Congressman Pat Fallon this same question. Do you think the videotape should be released to the American public?
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to set that precedent. We should have a trust in our elected representatives to appropriately represent this classified footage that they see. Again, there was a time I was, it's not about me, but I have experience, one day serving during the Obama administration and the next day serving in the Trump administration in 2017. One day it was micromanagement, process-oriented bureaucracy, even at the tip of the spear in combat operations, again, micromanaged by the Obama White House. And then the next day, it was mission command, deference, and trust in military leaders with the experience to do the mission that they were given, in my case, to defeat ISIS, and in this case, to protect the American homeland from narco-terrorists. I don't think we want to get to a space where the military is nitpicked and every video is released to the public so we could assess it like a Monday Night Football clip.
I was thinking about Monday morning quarterback. Yeah. All right. That 24-hour period must have been, or 48-hour period must have been a little bit like whiplash for you. All right. General Holt and Will Thibeau, thank you both, and thank you for your service.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Coming up, political violence is something that should be off limits, no matter what you believe, hands down. Well, a new poll from Harvard might shock you. That when the record continues.
You know the holidays are meant to be about family, laughter, and taking things slow. But when you're in pain, it's hard to enjoy any of it. I know because my back has made life difficult. But that's why I love the Signal Relief Patch. It's helped me enjoy the holidays again. Join the thousands who have experienced relief and get 30% off your Signal Relief Patch today. I've given this patch as a gift to friends, family, and even strangers I've seen in pain.
Signal Relief has truly given me my happiness back.
The Signal Relief Patch puts pain on the back burner.
The Signal Relief Patch has been life-changing.
This is too good to be true. It's too easy.
In a recent study, over 85% of people felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. This patch was a game changer for me, and it can be for you too. Trust me, the patch works.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
From drained investment accounts and stolen tax returns to lost wages and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. That's why only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package, which covers stolen funds, experts and lawyers, and out-of-pocket expenses up to $3 million in total. Don't face the high cost of identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with LifeLock. Join today.
3, 2, 1. I found Tunnel to Towers just through a TV commercial. I was like, oh, I wonder if they help out injured first responders. So when the towers did reach out, it was awesome.
Men and women like Jay Youngblood, who served their country, are so deserving of their independence and the ability to take care of their children and provide for them. And that's what the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is doing when we give them a house.
Tunnel to Towers shows there's still humanity out there. Please donate $11 a month to t2t.org.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Hi, I'm Trudy of Johnny Chick's Home and Hardware. Customers ask me all the time how to prepare for cold weather and avoid costly plumbing problems. My answer is the Freeze Miser. It installs in seconds without tools and activates only when the water temperature drops below 37 degrees. The Freeze Miser releases the minimal amount of water needed to prevent freezing. It's perfect for your home, farm and ranch, RV, water wells, and much more. Ask for the Freeze Miser at your favorite hardware or farm and ranch store, or go to freezemiser.com.
Well, this is not something you see very often when you're talking about Russian President Vladimir Putin, or of course watching him. Check this out. Upon landing in New Delhi, India, Prime Minister Modi gave Putin a bear hug. It can only be described as that, and a firm handshake. This was Putin's first trip to India since the beginning of the war. Now, at the annual summit, the two leaders agreed to expand economic ties. Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder is in Kyiv with more. Shelby.
Hi, Katrina. Yeah, just adding what you had said there on this state visit to India, Vladimir Putin said Russia is ready to provide uninterrupted shipments of fuel to the country, despite pressure from the Trump administration for India to scale back its ties to Moscow. Trump previously imposed an additional 25% tariff on India for its purchases of Russian oil, which Washington says is funding Russia's war machine. Putin made these remarks alongside Prime Minister Narendra Modi today as the two leaders hailed new cooperation agreements. And the Russian president's comments signaled a defiant stance toward Donald Trump, as Putin and Modi affirmed their relationship is, quote, resilient to external pressure, end quote. Separately, new data from the Reagan National Defense Survey shows support for Ukraine remains strong across the United States. Support for sending U.S. weapons has also increased, rising 9 points to 64% compared to last year. And Americans appear increasingly skeptical of Vladimir Putin's intentions and are more supportive of a firm U.S. posture toward Moscow, reflecting the peace through strength ethos. And approximately 70% of Americans say they do not trust Russia to honor any peace agreement it might sign with Ukraine. That includes majorities of both Republican and Democrats aligning behind Kyiv. These results come as the Trump administration pushes for an end to Russia's war, but has reportedly urged Ukraine to make concessions, such as territorial concessions, and also accept limits on its defenses with future security agreements. And this latest data is showing that Republican voters are increasingly supportive of efforts to deter adversaries, including Russia, rather than reward them. And otherwise, the breaking news we've had coming through is learning that U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators in Miami are continuing talks today. That was supposed to be the second day, but we've heard that they're likely also going to be going into Saturday. So this would be a marathon of peace talks taking place, but very little otherwise is coming out of those meetings. But we'll be following closely to see what emerges, if anything. Katrina.
Shelby, you, of course, have been covering this horrible war very, very closely. I know you often have to sleep in bomb shelters or seek shelter in the middle of the night, and you hear alarms going off, you hear drones and rockets, and you know, you're speaking with so many of the Ukrainians on the ground there, in addition to speaking to some heads of state. But when they start to hear that these peace talks may be slowing, or maybe are just not getting where they had hoped they would get when we were all hoping for good news many, many months ago, what is the feeling like? Does it feel like, are they despondent? Have they given up, or are they still fighting and moving forward?
They're still fighting, Katrina, because they tell me that they have no other choice. This is an existential crisis for Ukraine. It's about their survival. And what we've heard from Vladimir Putin this week, last week, he said he will not stop until he takes all of the Donbass region. So not making any concessions. And for Ukraine, they have said, listen, no deal is better than a bad deal. And when they say that, that's because they say that they are fighting so that there won't be another invasion of Ukraine. The sacrifice they're making today is for the future children of Ukraine. They want to make sure this ends with them, but it ends with a last and justing peace so that no more Ukrainians will have to endure what they have. Remember, as you mentioned, every single day here in Kiev, across Ukraine, we are under attacks. There are sirens. This entire population is not only sleep deprived, they have PTSD, from the children to the elderly. That's because we're approaching nearly 4 years of Russia's full-scale invasion. But they are not ready to surrender to what they call the aggressor. And they certainly want Russia to be held accountable for its war crimes and for its invasion that Vladimir Putin, at this point in time, has no intention of stopping.
All right, Shelby Wilder, thank you. The Ukrainian people, of course, and you as well. Incredible strength of both mind and spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina.
In the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, perhaps you'd think young Americans would resoundingly reject any form of political violence, but quite the contrary. According to this Harvard Youth poll, nearly 40% of young Americans believe political violence is acceptable under certain circumstances. Now, of that group who think it's okay, 28% say it is when the government violates individual rights. 12% say when election outcomes are fraudulent. 11% believe when someone else encourages violence and when someone promotes extremist beliefs. And 10%, focus on this one, 10% say when peaceful protests do not accomplish their goal. Now, this poll did not take into account political identities, but it does show a stark divide in our country. Political violence used to be a non-starter, with everyone seeming to agree that it was not acceptable, but obviously this poll shows otherwise. All right, and coming up, which vaccines are actually needed for newborn babies? That when the record continues.
Under President Trump's strong leadership, we're winning. Now President Trump has once again delivered for American consumers. By working alongside great American-built companies like Pfizer, President Trump has negotiated America First prices that put us first, dramatically reducing prescription drug costs, helping over 100 million Americans, and forcing Europe to pay their fair share. Find your medication for the lowest price. Visit TrumpRx.gov. And America First win on prescription prices.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
This is the sound of the season's favorite gift. For a limited time, Omaha Steaks is offering the favorite gift package that includes our famous bacon-wrapped filet mignon, our delicious air-chilled chicken breast, burgers, franks, sides, and desserts, all for just $89.99. That's 65% off. Order now to include 4 more burgers free. This exclusive TV offer is our best of the season and won't last. Order today at omahasteaks.com/TV.
Nice.
At Pure Talk, life is simple, and so are the deals. For instance, an unlimited wireless plan means unlimited savings for life. Not for the life of your phone, for your life. Unlimited talk, text, and data on a crazy fast 5G network for $29.95 a month for the rest of your life. Honestly, there's never been another deal like it. In fact, you might say it's the deal of your lifetime. Pure Talk, everything you need, nothing you don't.
Radical jihadists are not done. Iran promises death to America. They've built sleeper terror cells in the U.S. They support terror groups out to destroy Israel, including Hamas, whose founding charter calls for Islam to dominate the world.
The young people have been educated to believe that the most sacred thing they do is stab a Christian in the heart.
The only democracy in the Middle East that supports religious freedom is Israel. Standing for freedom, not terror.
We're talking to people today about investments. Let's see if we can get somebody. Excuse me, sir. Do you have a retirement account?
I do. I'm invested in some annuities.
Fixed income? How is that?
It was better a few years ago. Each year, it buys less and less, barely keeping up.
That's where gold can make a difference. Unlike fixed payouts, gold rises with inflation, so you're not stuck with a low fixed payment.
So gold isn't stuck in the past like my annuity?
Don't let inflation erode your retirement savings. Invest in gold. Invest with Noble Gold Investments.
Some new vaccine guidance is coming for parents of newborns. A CDC panel voted 8-3 in favor of changing a longstanding recommendation that all babies get the hepatitis B vaccine on the day they're born. For decades, the federal government has advised that all babies be vaccinated against a liver infection right after birth. But today, the CDC committee voted to recommend the birth dose only for babies whose mothers test positive. For other babies, it will be up to parents and doctors to decide if a birth dose is appropriate. Joining me now is former White House COVID response coordinator, Dr. Deborah Birx. Dr. Birx, thank you for being with us here. Are you surprised about this decision today?
No, I'm actually not. I'm hoping what will happen. I have a little different take on all of this. Number one, we want to protect the moms. And if we want to protect the mom, that baby, we want to make sure that the mom is diagnosed, that the mom is vaccinated so that she's protected during that pregnancy and future pregnancies. And we want to make sure moms are healthy and can raise their children and can thrive. So I'm hoping this shifts focus back to when moms get pregnant, testing them for hepatitis B and C. It's a quick test. It's easy. It's highly accurate. And let's get those moms vaccinated, or let's get them treated if they have hepatitis C. Let's not only focus on the infant, because we want that mom there and we want that mom to be healthy throughout that pregnancy and to be able to raise that child.
But by removing this recommendation for the hepatitis B for all babies, is that putting infants, newborns at risk?
Not if the moms have been vaccinated, so already have hepatitis B antibody protecting them and their baby. And not only risk to that baby is if the mom has active hepatitis B, and it's easy to diagnose. And so what they're saying is focus on the moms, make sure the moms are vaccinated. If they do have hepatitis B or C, that they either get treated or the baby gets that dose for hepatitis B, that vaccine at birth. And so I'm hoping it shifts the focus back to ensuring that we have healthy moms and healthy babies, and not just using a safety net for babies alone, because we have a lot of moms that still are not diagnosed and still are not protected.
Dr. Birx, what I do want to point out and have you speak to is the fact that this is not a ruling saying that infants cannot get the hepatitis vaccine or saying that it is in some way dangerous for them, but it is simply putting the decision making back into the hands of the parents and also the recommendation of the doctor.
Correct. And that's why I'm hoping, remember, the moms are being seen by OBGYNs, their obstetricians, and the babies are seen by their pediatrician. What we want to ensure is both the mom, OBGYN, and the baby, pediatricians, agree on the best progress and best situation for that mom and the baby. And so they're saying, if you want to get vaccinated, yes. If you don't know the mom's status, yes. But if the mom can get vaccinated and protected during pregnancy, she's protecting that baby and her future babies.
Dr. Birx, is there any certain point then, say, for maybe newborns who are not going to be getting that hepatitis B vaccine at a certain age when maybe they should, also to protect themselves? At what age do things shift? Do things change?
Absolutely. We know with HPV and the HPV vaccine and hepatitis B, the primary exposure for individuals, not babies, but for people are when there's sexual activity. So you want those children immunized in adolescence. So making sure that just like with the HPV vaccine, that they get the HPV vaccine and the hepatitis B vaccine at the same time. Now I'm going to be very clear. These vaccines are safe. They're safe in the newborn. They're safe in the adolescents. They're safe for the moms. This is not a question of vaccine safety. This is really a question of how best do we protect the moms and the babies and ensure that both of them are healthy.
But Dr. Birx, playing devil's advocate here, I mean, if just again saying that if all newborns would continue to get the hepatitis B vaccine, how would that potentially take away from the mothers being healthy? Again, isn't that something that, since it was expected, maybe should just stay as something that is recommended?
I think sometimes when physicians know that there's a safety net for the baby, if they miss it in the mom, they don't consider that a public health miss. And what I'm saying is it's a public health miss if we don't know the status of the mom and we don't focus on the mom. I remember very early in HIV, we did a lot of prevention to keep babies from getting infected. And then the moms died of HIV. And that entire family and all the children were at risk because they didn't have a mom. So I just want to make sure that we're not just focused on the babies, that we're ensuring that moms are diagnosed and treated and vaccinated as well as babies. This is not taking anything away from the babies. It's just shifting the focus to ensure that because we're thinking that the baby's going to get protected, that we're not focused adequately on the mom.
It reminds me, Dr. Birx, of when you're in an airplane and they always take you through the emergency protocol and they say put on your own mask before that of a baby or a child or anybody else, again, because then you can take care of other people. So that's what that makes me think of. And just quickly, before we let you go, I just do want to point out the fact that there are other vaccines, say measles vaccines, that by a lot of people, many members of the population choosing not to get it, that has resulted in problems. So maybe just some quick advice to mothers, to parents about how to navigate some of these vaccines that you may be concerned about.
You know, these traditional infectious disease that were quite deadly to children in the 50s and the 60s, for which we went an all-out effort to develop these safe and effective vaccines. There are vaccines that these children need because we really do need to protect them against measles, mumps, and rubella. We need to protect them against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. We don't want whooping cough. If you had a child with any of these diseases, you will ensure that your children are vaccinated. What's happened is a lot of the 20 and 30 somethings never experienced the depths of these diseases and never saw these children who were sick for 2 weeks, really incredibly sick with measles, even the ones that recovered. And so they lost 2 weeks of school. So let's ensure our children can stay in school. For the first time, I'm hearing competent physicians tell me that they're not vaccinating their children. We have to really work as a nation to reassure that everyone that these vaccines are safe. And these discussions about schedule, this is not about saying people don't need hepatitis B vaccine. They need hepatitis B vaccine. Right. It's about when they get it.
All right. So
again, I just want to make sure that we do what's best for all of our children.
And again, this is about kind of modifying protocol and timelines, not about just negating vaccines that are safe altogether. All right, Dr. Birx, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, our outrage of the day. on Friday. That's always fun. Win the record.
When it comes to my daily heart health supplement, I've got 3 rules. It's got to be plant-based, it's got to be doctor recommended, and it's got to be Super Beets from Human.
Discover why Super Beets is the #1 cardiologist recommended beet brand for heart health support at livehuman.com.
Now it's a great time to play Solitaire Grand Harvest and enjoy a new world of solitaire. Brr, a cold world. This Christmas, discover all the holiday fun with exciting features from Santa, like our winter tournaments, festive mini-games, and challenging levels. Ever built a farm in the snow? 'Tis the season to turn classic into fantastic. So download Solitaire Grand Harvest for free and see for yourself.
Think of all the places that could expose you to identity theft. If something happens, LifeLock provides a dedicated US-based restoration specialist with expertise to make the right calls and take the right steps to fix your case start to finish. In fact, we're so confident restoration is guaranteed or your money back. Don't face identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with the leader in identity theft protection, LifeLock, for the threats you can't control.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The 2 big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
The Black Friday sale is on with the lowest price of the year. Order online at dropthepounds.com/Black Friday, promo code Black Friday. That's dropthepounds.com/Black Friday, promo code Black Friday.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue. Rose Sparks. Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Welcome back to The Record. I'm Katrina Szish in for Greta Van Susteren, and it is time for our Outrage of the Day alert. A Brazilian Harvard Law School professor has agreed to leave the United States following his arrest by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. 43-year-old Carlos Gouveia was arrested back in October after firing a pellet gun near a Boston area synagogue on the eve of Yom Kippur. Now, when the police asked Gouveia what he was doing, here's what he said. He said he was hunting rats. According to the Department of Homeland Security, after his arrest, Gouveia agreed to self-deport. Now to some real-life Grinches this holiday season. What is wrong? In South Carolina, people are searching for a suspect who stole Christmas decorations from someone else's front lawn. Ring camera video then shows the person stealing a package. And in Florida, another Grinch allegedly stole Christmas decorations from a family's lawn. The suspect seen filling their car. A family even tried to confront the suspect, but they drove off. And another case in Florida. This woman broke into a McDonald's and actually began ripping down Christmas decorations. She later flipped over one of the registers. I'm sensing some rage there. Police are asking the public for help in identifying her. And now to London. This one's a little gross. Protesters entered the very swanky Ritz Hotel and they dumped horse manure in front of the beautiful Christmas tree. You're watching it happening now with those big bags. Demonstrators said they were protesting against the, quote, obscenely wealthy. However, no arrests were made. And coming up, we're taking another look at a story from this week because fresh footage just changed the picture. Stay with us. The Record continues after this.
I'm Wade Allen Root, the national TV and radio host known as the MAGA warrior and the capitalist evangelist. This presidency is ushering in the golden age of prosperity, and it's all built around making America the energy capital of the world. Enter Lost Soldier Oil and Gas. It took 40 years to piece together this 40,000-acre giant gas discovery. It's estimated to contain up to 6 trillion cubic feet of gas, with a management forecast projecting the first 25 wells alone to produce 400 million cubic feet per day of natural gas. This is how we power the AI future of America, with clean natural gas. Headed by oil and gas legend Mark Bruner, whose previous public companies delivered spectacular returns for investors at their peaks. Pedico Energy grew about 100 to 1 for investors. Ultra Petroleum grew about 1,000 to 1 for investors. To learn more about Lost Soldier Oil and Gas, scan the QR code on the screen or go to lostsoldier.com. That's lostsoldier.com.
You know the holidays are meant to be about family, laughter, and taking things slow. But when you're in pain, it's hard to enjoy any of it. I know because my back has made life difficult. But that's why I love the Signal Relief Patch. It's helped me enjoy the holidays again. Join the thousands who have experienced relief and get 30% off your Signal Relief Patch today. I've given this patch as a gift to friends, family, and even strangers I've seen in pain.
Signal Relief is truly giving me my happiness back.
The Signal Relief Patch puts pain on the back burner.
The Signal Relief Patch has been life-changing.
This is too good to be true. It's too easy.
In a recent study, over 85% of people felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. This patch was a game changer for me, and it can be for you too. Trust me, the patch works.
Hello everyone, it's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
Well, some new footage was released from this raccoon's drunken rampage in Virginia. Remember this little guy? It looks like after going through all the liquor bottles, someone got a little off balance. There you go. You can see the culprit looking through boxes, then falling from a shelf. But he's sobered up and he is okay. Too bad he couldn't have any Tylenol. All right. Be careful of what you do this weekend. But right now, the Chris Salcedo Show is up next.